Hello everyone, welcome to today's talk. My name is Shiv Kapoor. I'm in 12th grade at Head Start Educational Academy. My sister Tara and I saw this lockdown as an opportunity to help us all by bringing professionals from various domains to expose our students to a spectrum of careers. Today, we would like to invite Mr. Raman Jokhakar, who is currently a partner at BD Jokhakar & Co. He is a chartered accountant by profession and is a partner at BD Jokhakar & Co. Mr. Raman is also the chairman and editor of Bombay Chartered Accountant Journal, one of the oldest CA journals. He did a major in accounting and a BCom at the University of Bombay. He also studied at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and did a master's diploma in global strategic management at the Institute of Chartered Financial Analysis of India. Furthermore, he is a certified information systems auditor, CISA, and a certified internal auditor, CIA, from the Institute of Internal Auditors, USA. Before we let Mr. Jokhakar take over, we would like to share a few housekeeping rules with you all. Firstly, as moderators, we will ensure everyone except the speaker is muted and their video is turned off throughout the call. Please ensure that you do not scribble on the screens or turn on your voice or video. And lastly, you may ask any questions you have at any time during the session in the chat. Kindly refrain from sending them privately to the speaker. The second half of this call will be used to answer the relevant questions, and as moderators, we will pose your questions directly to Mr. Raman. Thank you, Mr. Raman Jokhakar. Please take over from here.
Thank you, Shiv. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Can you please turn on your video?
Oh, I should. Okay. So, hi, Shiv. Thank you for that introduction. Welcome everyone at 9 p.m. on a weekday. Perhaps it's already a school day for most of you. In Mumbai, school has started. What we'll do is we'll 15 minutes or so on about your journey as a CA. And
Mr. Raman,
my story is quite simple
you.
that my, yeah.
Your internet connection is weak, so we can't really hear you.
You can't hear me? Shiv, how is it now?
It's better.
It's better. Let me keep the video off, and if it stays better, then I can turn it back on. You can interrupt and let me know.
Okay, that works.
So I can get the video back on if it goes well.
Okay, that works.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Coming back to the topic, my journey was fairly straightforward. I had chartered accountants in my family. My father is a chartered accountant. My uncle is a chartered accountant, and my grandfather was also a chartered accountant. So I was kind of genetically biased to become one. However, that's not the only reason. It's like you have family of doctors, your family of servicemen, their whole family is in army. I know families who are like 8-10 doctors. All of them are specialists in some area or the other. And so I had that kind of a background, and I saw how chartered accountants were, what they were doing, and how good it was or how bad it was. So I had a first-hand experience right inside my family. We also had a firm that was established. It was a respectable profession, I thought. And but that was not my key criteria. I felt that the main thing in life was freedom. And then you could trade a bit of money for that freedom. And in the end, when you look at multiple career options at that age, I felt that if I was doing something that was respectable, that will get me a big amount of freedom, in the sense that, I was my own boss, that would be ideal for me. Of course, I also looked at other fields. At least in those years, you could perhaps end up being a lawyer, or you could get into sciences, or one could get into arts and do a bunch of things, but none of them were of great interest to me. So I felt that this was perhaps the best option, and so I went for it. Okay, so that's part of the background. CA per se, as a course, and we'll come to some questions that people are asking. We'll let the moderators take them on after this first 10 minutes. Per se, CA course is not like school or college. So if you have seen school so far, or have heard a little bit about being in college, it's nothing like that. It's top 10 most difficult courses in the world to pass. So it has a lot of intensity while one goes through the rigors of training. And the training itself consists of 3 years of practical training. Now, this is the most interesting part. Unlike being in a school or college or many other courses, perhaps I don't know of any other course that will give you 3 years full-time practical training, meaning you are working in a live environment, you are working on live projects. There's nothing that is classroom based as such. So you get trained as you work. So I feel that that's one of the most fascinating parts, or most interesting way to learn something. And this only happens in professions. You see that in lawyers to some extent. You see that, I think, in architects, where you are actually working full time and studying as well. Now, the other question was, after a BCom that many people end up, or after 12th. Now at that time we could start CA after BCom, or you had to take an entrance test. Nowadays, one could start the chartered accountancy course after 12th. So that's when people make decisions, and if they are ready to give it a shot, post 12th, you don't spend those 3 years of going to college, although a lot of people end up doing bachelor's alongside their accountancy enrollment. So and when you're doing CA, obviously BCom looks quite easy. So it's 3 years of practical training post 12th. One is also most people attend some kind of classes, because from say 11 to 5 or 6 you're working in an office in a live environment. You have some responsibility. You have to sort of meet timelines, give some deliverables, meaning accomplish actual work. And then if you are doing a bachelor's course, then sometimes people at least attend half of their college. I guess these days 50% attendance is mandatory, or maybe 75. So people make up for that, and then they attend some kind of private tuition classes, which you see these days almost in all cities, even in second, third tier cities. So it's quite a lot of work throughout the day, and before work hours you have to study, and that's how the 3 years pass. The pass rate of CA, that way they say that it's easy to enter but difficult to exit. In last several years, the pass rates have been between 2% to 7. I think last time it was around 10% of all those who appeared, they passed. It has, groups and so on. So one could give 4 subjects at a time in an exam, and they don't have to give all 8 or 10 subjects at a time. The CA course is also broken up, into 2 big parts. And I had never studied that much before I saw the books from the CA Institute. And the total number of books, if you just stack all of them, they would be around 5 to 6 feet. So I have seen children posting their pictures at the end of passing the CA, and they, put all their books one on top of the other. And this is just plain study material that comes, which is about 5 to 6 feet, if that's a different way to measure. So that's basically about the course. And if you have questions, then you can ask more details. But obviously there are other possibilities after commerce, or if you want to enter the commerce stream. Some people these days become company secretaries or cost accountants, or even chartered financial analysts, if you want that slightly different line, which is not arts or science. So then there are many other options also available, which have something to do with numbers, if we can call it so. So that's sort of broad basics about chartered accountancy course. After chartered accountancy, I felt that I needed to work outside India, so I spent some time working outside India, and I got some good experience in Australia. A lot of people try to either study or work out to get that exposure in a different country, in a different culture, in a different work environment that has slightly different work ethics. But the main part I would like to share about the accounting, the chartered accountancy course that it's definitely not very easy. And I had to remind myself almost all the time while I was studying that the only way out was through. And so it just meant very consistent work on a daily basis, weekly basis. And when you are doing your exams, you are in a quarantine kind of a zone. You switch off your phone. One went to the library from 7 or 8 in the morning and came back for lunch probably and lied down for half an hour, went back till 8 in the night. Then you would just get some fresh air or, walk or exercise, eat and just rest. So during the exam, it's quite intense. Almost all, if you take all 8 papers in our times, they used to be back to back. So nowadays you get one leave in between, which makes it a little bit easier. But in those days, they were all back to back. And, you can imagine you switch from one topic to the other on a daily basis. You try to reabsorb or review all the things that you have studied in whatever 8-10 hours. You still need good rest for the brain to remain functional and active while you are writing the paper. So that was also part of that intense training. I finally chose to be in practice. A lot of people these days don't opt for practice, and practice means you work as an accountant. For example, let me give an example of a doctor. You could either have your own clinic or your own hospital or your own outfit, or you could join a hospital or some other place where you can work as a professional. So CA offers similar thing. You can practice, as we call it, on your own, have your own firm, have your own outfit, and employ a bunch of people and carry out a number of things. Or you could even end up joining a company, say an Infosys or a Reliance or some stockbroking entity, or almost every business needs an accountant, a very good accountant, a sound accountant. So those are the two big options. There are some famous CAs I was told I could quote, and these famous CAs that you may have heard of are, if you want to start with the politicians, you have Piyush Goyal, who is a minister, who is also an accountant. You want to start with somebody who is in education and investment, you have Mohandas Pai. If you want to look at movie stars, Shekhar Kapoor. Or you want big bulls, if you want to call the money makers in the stock market, you have Rakesh Jhunjhunwala or Motilal Oswal, and so on. You have the HDFC Bank MD Aditya Puri, who is also a CA, or you have Kumar Birla, who runs a very big conglomerate, which is an Indian MNC. So there are accountants in almost every field. What does it give you? Meaning, what does that training and what do you end up working as? What does it offer you? So I think the training gives you a very good sense of working with numbers, and numbers are sort of quantification of what actually happens. For example, we measure our weight, and the numbers tell us how much we weigh. or when we buy a house, we always measure it, whether it's big, small. So, dealing with numbers allows us to measure things, and overall approach and overall interaction with number and measurement is something that you learn. The second big thing that CAs always learn is called substance over form. So these days we see things. We see, say, advertisement, and the advertisement is trying to lure you into buying something, right? Now, what we call that as the form, and the CAs are trained to look through the form and into the substance. And the substance, I would give the example, okay, if they are luring you to buy, say, a fancy phone, the substance is, do you need that fancy phone? Do you need that particular brand? Do you need all the functionalities that are built into that? So this is the difference between, say, a substance and a form. And how do you make a decision? How do you give a judgment? How do you tell that when you are given certain numbers, are they reflecting the underlying form? So if you say that a company made so much money, have they really made that money, or are they fudging numbers? Or are they doing some tricks to show something different from what actually is? So that's one big part of the accountancy training, where you learn the concept of substance over form, and questioning what you actually read. Of course, then there are many other benefits. It depends on what you want to do in life later on, because you look at many companies and their CFOs, CEOs, say UK's 97% or 90% of listed 100 or 200 companies, their CEOs or CFOs are chartered accountants. Of course, chartered accountants of UK. So one could always end up at a very high ranking position if you joined industry and not, and if you were not in a practice and you decided to join an industry. The other part that one can consider is, what's the environment outside? And that's a big part of most of our decisions. How is the environment outside? And today there is huge amount of competition. India has some 50-60% of their population in the range which is under 45 or under 35, and jobs are shrinking. So there is a lot of competition from the supply side. On the demand side, you have a shrinking demand because machines are taking over, because technology is taking over. What we used to do accounting, for example, if you look at, say, France, we used to get bills and invoices and a lot of paper to be submitted. Wherever you worked, you had to submit any kind of cost you incurred, or the hotel you stayed when you traveled. Say in France today, technology has taken over, and you can just throw away that bill. Say a French director is in India, he would just take a photograph from his app, and it will capture in any language and plug it into the accounting system immediately. So he didn't have to go back to Paris, give all his bills of staying in Mumbai, hiring a taxi, eating food, or whatever. He just had to click a photograph, enter into that system, and it got accounted immediately, including whether it had GST, the name of the seller, all of the details in any language. If you were in China, it would still capture. If it was in Hindi, if it was in Tamil, it could still capture. So, technology is doing massive work, and accountants are most susceptible to being beaten by technology. So amongst top 10 or 20 industries that that are at risk, accounting is one of them, because technology will take over large part of what people do today. For example, what do accountants do? That's, the other question. Uh, for example, you look at, say, tax. People want their tax work to be done. If you are corporates, they have some kind of tax issues. They want advice. They want some structuring to be done, in the sense, what's the best way of setting up your business so that you optimize taxes. And uh, and today, a lot of these services that accountants provide could be taken over by technology. Imagine if Google sat on your, say, at a very simplistic level, if you had some kind of an app from Google, and it could just, you allowed that app to look through your Gmail account, which had all your bank statements, your spending, your Uber bills, your, whatever else, share sale and purchase or investment, all of it sitting in your Google account. And it could, if you allow it to read, probably it could just pick up all of that data and give you some kind of an output. So I think those days are not far when, 20, 30, 40, 50% of what we do today will be taken over by technology. So there is, I told you about demand and supply side, that there are a way lot of people, and on the other side, technology is taking over. Last one, what are the attributes that one would look for in yourself? Because sometimes you like something, but you also have to see whether you have some inherent attributes which will make you succeed in that particular endeavor. So here I would say that, sincerity and consistency is probably a very, very big element in getting through the course. And I know a lot of people who pass out of CA after 2, 3, 4, 5. I know people who passed out after 8 attempts. So they gave that exam 8 times. And it's quite stressful, for example, if you haven't failed ever, that course, CA course could be the first time when someone fails, because, usually in your college or school, nobody fails, there's nothing like failure. And one realizes that you didn't pass because of, say, 1 mark or half a mark or 5 marks, or then there is aggregate. If you didn't go past 40%, then you are not sailing through. So these kind of challenges does exist. So I feel consistency and sincerity and not giving up at what you want to do are sort of the inherent attribute that one needs. And of course, all your other, what would you say, skill sets that one has, liking numbers, you have people who just don't like maths, they don't like to work with numbers. Some people have, liking, and liking is not really the right word. They just are sort of language oriented or arts oriented or design oriented, or that way. And some people are very good into numbers, others are into logic, and they might reason out a lot of things and end up becoming a lawyer and stuff like that. So these are some of the attributes. And nowadays you have so many tools where you can actually find your strengths. I remember there was some book or an online portal which which was called Strength Finder, if I'm not mistaken. And one could find, what were my strengths. And I'm sure there are more, and others have told you about these apps or portals that help you find your strength. So I think I'll stop here. It's half an hour instead of 15 minutes. And you can ask me questions if there are any.
Yes, there are a few questions that have come in. The first question is, if I'm not good in math, do you still feel I should get into CA?
So, maths as we learn in school is fairly different from accounting, because accounting is not maths. Very loosely people tie maths with accounting. And I know very good mathematicians and they can't be anywhere close to being accountants. So yeah, the answer would be that if you are not good with maths, you could still be accountant. But the question is, do you like being surrounded by numbers? You like being surrounded to measure things? You feel that it makes some sense, it adds value to someone if you gave some kind of a decision or judgment, or help them arrive at something by looking at laws. And accounting is not just numbers. A big part of it you can call today is data. A big part of it is laws, because numbers are probably 20-30% of it. And of course, in the end, you are looking at numbers. But in the middle, there are decisions about strategy, whether you should set up a plant or not, whether should one get into this business or not, because should you set up a business in this country or a different country? So these kind of questions also are big part of an accountant's life, because those answers that one is seeking link you to the tax part, to the business aspect of it, and also converting all of that into actual numbers, because in the end, it's always numbers. So my answer would be that if you're not good at maths, do you like some of what I said? And that should give you the answer.
Okay, so the next question is, there are many students who do a CA and a CS. Is that possible to do it without a BCom degree? Also, what is the job rate possibilities? There's the second part.
CA you could straight away start after 12th. So most people enroll, I think there is some kind of an entrance test that you could give. And once you have passed that test, and it's a very simple test, and it's, I mean, there is a little more challenge than what you see in 12th class. But if you pass that test, then you can join a practical training. And I think same is true for CS. And both could be done simultaneously, because I believe CS is not that challenging, but it has a good volume of material that one has to study. And of course, it is sort of a test of your endurance. How much can you take on? Some people do law and accountancy, some people do CS and CA. So, whether you can handle two courses, because you mostly would have classes in the morning, you attend the office during the day. And by the time you reach home, like in Mumbai, everyone travels 1 to 2 hours each way. So one is left with no energy at the end of the day to study for the second course. So I think that should answer some of those questions.
So the second part to that question was, what is the job rate possibilities if both are done together?
Can you come again, Shiv? Speak louder.
So the second part of the question was, what are the job rate possibilities if both are done together, a CA and a CS?
So they are complementary, if that's the question. If you were a CA and CS, that's much better than just being a CA. But that's not a complete answer, because what is it that you want to end up doing? And I think that's your main thing, whether you will enjoy doing this thing for next 5, 10, 20 years of your life. And then if you had that CS degree, it would definitely make your chances or your compensation package better than just being a CS. But I would also like to add that your experience is very important. A lot of times our education makes us feel that marks alone matter. But when you go for an interview, uh, what counts is that now you are stepping into an actual real world. And if you are getting interviewed, they'll ask you, what did you do for those 3-4 years? And if you were just doing some kind of a lame or a dummy kind of an articleship, then that will not be that will not go in your favor. So that should also be kept in mind.
So the next question is, this person's currently doing a BBA in finance. He's
Right.
looking for suggestions on what to do next, a CA, CFA, or MBA.
But what does he like to do? Meaning with his life, what would he like? For example, if you were doing an MBA, you could do it in finance, marketing, and you have a bunch of options there. Would you like to be in practice, which means you are helping out people, you are solving problems, you are delivering services which are customized to your client? Or you would want a job in, say, a company as an accountant, as an accountant come data cruncher, or you are preparing reports. Now there are so many more options. So I think it will depend on what is it that you really like to do, and that should also be figured out. And if this person can share that, what is their liking? Would they be a manager? Would they like to market things, or get into some kind of business finance, get money from banks, and work in corporate finance function, and then look at money movements internally? What is it that you really like? And one could try it out, especially when you have vacation or something. Talk to other people. uh, if you get a chance, even when you're in 10th or 11th, when you got some time, see if you can find someone and work in their office and get a bit of taste of 2 or 3 streams, and see how it actually looks and how you feel about it.
So the next question is, how is the CA course in India versus abroad any different? Are there any different qualifications required to go abroad?
Good question. So CA course in India, so CA is kind of a license also. So anybody cannot sign, say, certain things. For example, you have financial reports, say a profit and loss or a balance sheet or certain certification. Only a CA with a certificate of practice, which is their license, they can sign it. Now, this license works only in India, but the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, which is the sole and exclusive body which gives this degree of chartered accountancy, it's not strictly called a degree, it's a postgraduate course as well. They have entered into memorandum of understanding with many different institutes of chartered accountants, with maybe 30-40 countries. So if you are a chartered accountant in India, you may still have to take a local test, but you may get exemption in many subjects in that country. So probably if you went to UAE, you may not need to take, say, any test. Indian chartered accountancy may be accepted. If you went to, say, a Nepal or a Bhutan, again, similar things might happen. But if you say went to Australia, then you may have to take up, say, 50% of their subjects to make your skill set match with what is required locally. So depending on the country you choose, you may need to take some more tests locally if you are an Indian chartered accountant. But of course, it will make your life easier and it will give you a much solid training here before you go out.
Okay, so the next question is, a lot of people just mention the pros of being a CA. Can you discuss some of the cons, some things you've experienced that didn't go so well being a chartered accountant?
So, sorry, Shiv, can you come again?
So most people only talk about the pros of being a chartered accountant. Could you discuss from your own experience some of the cons you have faced?
Some of the
negatives of being a chartered accountant.
Oh, negatives of being a chartered accountant. Well, you had the guy who did bomb blast in 1993 in Mumbai was a chartered accountant. Some of the biggest Indian stock market scam, they were chartered accountants. But the same thing applies with any other course. So I don't see that there is really any negative per se. But yeah, there is negative thing with how you use that training, how you are made up ethically to apply what you have learned and do what should be done rather than what should not be done. But I don't see that there is any negative side from a job perspective or from any other perspective. For example, you may see, okay, should I spend 3 years or should I just go to UK, spend 1 year, do some kind of an MBA, and I need to start making money within 1 year's time. So that could be one option. I mean, one way to compare. But I won't call that a negative because this is the course. If you have a time constraint, you have responsibility to fend for your family, then obviously it's not an easy or fixed end date course. Yeah, so it's not a very easy and it doesn't have a fixed end date. Does this answer make sense or something still not clear?
I think it makes sense. We'll move to the next question. What do you see will happen in the future with technology?
Can you shut the video?
Do you think technology will replace chartered accountants?
Do I think that what will replace?
Technology will replace chartered accountants.
So yes, technology will replace. Chartered accountancy has many different streams if you look at it. And for example, let's look at accounting. If you look at accounting, today technology has replaced maybe 70-80% of accounting. Yeah. Now, in the future, maybe more will replace accounting. So that's one way to look at it. But for example, if you have tax side, I don't see that, tax can be replaced because you have so much to think. You have say if you are a tax litigant and you are fighting tax cases or representing your clients as a chartered accountant before, say, a tribunal or a commissioner or one of those. Now, I don't see that that will get replaced, because in India, the way laws are made, I don't see that in next 100 years, these laws, can get replaced by such easy approach to them that, there is nothing to litigate. So some aspects, yes, accounting will get replaced, will sort of get taken over by technology. Taxation would not have that much impact, but any kind of compliance work, any kind of repetitive work, any kind of big data crunching, all of that will eventually get replaced. But if you have to, for example, find out whether a particular loan is better to be taken from X entity, Y entity, from India, outside India, from a bank outside India, from another entity outside India, and you had like 30 different options, and you had to make some kind of model which involved accounting, tax, business strategy, all of it together. Then it will, obviously technology is not likely to take over that level of judgment.
So the next question is, what should one's mindset be when studying a CA?
I think while studying CA, today or it's just a human mindset that we are always thinking about the outcome. And in sort of school, we know that, outcome is mostly going to be positive. And rarely do we find today that, kids not pass out of a class. So, but in CA, that is not so certain, whereas if you were doing a first year of college, or, 11th or BCom, there's very, very little chance that you will not pass. So in CA, you see that there is this massive portion which is very hard to cover in the first place. And after that, if you think of the outcome, that really drags people's progress, because that psychological pressure of thinking about whether my result would be positive or not, that I always tell students who work in my office, that not to think of the outcome. It's like playing sports, when you practice, you are thinking of this, that, all of it. But when you are actually running the race, you don't think of the outcome. And I know people who actually in the exam hall also think about the outcome. And this requires certain amount of endurance to look at really massive amount of study material. So it's not smaller books, but they are fairly fat books. And there are 8 different subjects at, say, first level, and then there are 8 different subjects at the second level. So the mindset is that you will slowly meet all those challenges. You will read through them. You will remember what you have read. And main thing, like I said, is can you be consistent and sincere? So like daily picking up the book, even for 20 minutes, half an hour, just open it, read it, open it, read it. It's not like when the exam comes, I'll make up in last 3 months. It doesn't work that way. So I think those 2-3 things one should remember.
Okay, so the next question is there a deep study of corporate law or company laws in terms of taxation rules during the study of a CA?
Yes, so you study corporate laws, you study other commercial laws, and then which one did you said? Did you say company law?
Company, corporation laws, and taxation rules.
Yes, you study all of them along with accounting, along with audit, along with taxes, along with costing. You have now technology as one subject. So yes, you study uh, quite a different spectrum in terms of those 8 to 15 subjects over those 3 years.
So the next question is there any stream in CA that wouldn't be replaced by technology other than the taxation stream?
Acha, so taxation stream, any kind of compliance and repetitive work will get replaced anywhere, right? So something that's just lot of data, it has to be compiled, it has to be put in a certain form, and then without much judgment, if you just have to supply it, those jobs will be taken over by machines. For example, today if you have to do some kind of tax return work, I would believe that only in few years tax return would be simplified. If you look at the last budget or some changes that the finance minister gave in February, they made salaried returns very, very simple. So if you are not taking this and that deduction, you might be able to go to the website, download a simple utility, fill out a couple of fields, and just press submit, and your return should get filed. But where there is a lot of judgment involved, for example, when I spoke about, say, substance and form, there is some kind of a judgment there. Are all the accounting standards complied with? Are laws and regulations applicable to companies? Are they complied with? And there are very deep levels of each of these questions. Those kind of things won't get taken over by technology, and these kind of skills get built over a number of years. They don't just come from education or courses or training, but when you do more of that work, you develop that uh, uh, competence to get a good judgment about things. I'm sorry to use that word judgment, but there is no other word that we use as accountants. You kind of opine upon certain things and see whether they are the way they should be, rather than covering it up and making it look better than what they actually are.
We have a couple of people doing their second year BCom. They have
Yeah.
the option of taking accounts of finance. They want to know how useful is each of them and they would like a recommendation.
What options do they have?
Accounts and finance.
I don't know whether what they like, but accounts is not what they study in BCom, because when they go actually to work, it won't be just what they are studying. It will be much, much more than what they are seeing right now. And finance involves, money, borrowing, management of money within a company or a business. So finance is a very broad field as such. And either ways, I would feel that if you had finance and this, unless you want to be a banker, for example, you might want to get into finance and then get into banking. But again, banking has so many shades within that sphere. So whatever they like, I think, is what they should take, where they want to end up eventually.
So a clarification came, which has more scope, accounting or finance? And also requesting everyone to stop
And
scribbling on the screen, please.
scope in what sense? Scope in what sense?
Probably jobs in the future, salaries.
So, right. So salaries and jobs, if you went into finance, say for example, if you look at banking, banking is a very small sector in India, and there is a huge amount of untapped market in banking. So if you did something that, depending on where you want to end up, you want to end up in a bank, you want to end up in some kind of a financial institution, some kind of like an NBFC or one of those things, or you want to be an investment banker, get into that area, then you should take something that's more finance. But if you want to get into controls related to a company and its business, or their accounting or their tax and all of that, then you can get into chartered accountancy.
So with that, I think we should conclude today's session because we don't have any more questions. So on behalf of all our viewers, we would like to thank you, Mr. Raman, for giving us this insightful session today. Before you log out, just a quick reminder that our next session is on Sunday, the 31st of May, with Mr. Ankit Nagori, the co-founder of CultFit. He will talk to us on e-commerce and entrepreneurship. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Thank you again, Mr. Raman.